tonight on First at 9 this Friday, the 18th of July 2025. Tariff talks. Sri Lankan authorities led by Finance Secretary talk tariffs with US Trade Representative's office virtually. Big Blue. Sri Lanka likely to bear the brunt of global shocks sparked by higher US tariffs, warns former minister, urges the authorities to lobby the US government for further tariff reductions. Law of land law. Cope concerned of the disbursement of 43 acres of land from Hantanavatta to MP Chamindrani Kirala. Scales of justice. Ex-Minister Rajitha Senaratne denied anticipatory bail by the Colombo Chief Magistrate. Ex-Minister S.M. Chandrasena meanwhile further remanded until the 1st of August.
Enrolling now for the June 2025 intake and complete your degree in 2 years.
Men, Paradons, Joventa, Baleak. This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now, in your top story tonight, Sri Lankan authorities are continuing to make their case for a further reduction in tariffs to be imposed by the United States onwards from the 1st of August. At a key virtual negotiation today between Sri Lankan authorities led by Finance Secretary Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma and officials attached to the US Trade Representative's office, proposals in the interest of both parties concerning the matter were discussed. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha reveals that the United States has agreed in principle to slash tariffs down to 0% on 1,161 Sri Lankan exports.
US President Donald Trump's 30% reciprocal tariff on Sri Lankan exports is scheduled to come into effect on the 1st of August. While unveiling his new tariff scheme, on April 2nd, President Trump said he would slam a 44% tariff on Sri Lanka due to an 88% trade deficit between the two countries. However, through a recent letter issued to Sri Lanka, President Trump reduced the anticipated reciprocal tariff by 14%, bringing the tariff rate applicable to Sri Lanka down to 30% from 44%. Sri Lankan state officials meanwhile note that more negotiations will be carried out to further reduce the tariffs imposed. Against this backdrop, Minister of Foreign Affairs Vijitha Herath recently announced that a Sri Lankan government delegation will touch down in the United States to negotiate a further reduction to the tariffs by the 18th of July. However, the Ministry of Finance later revealed that the negotiation scheduled for today, the 18th of July, will be held virtually. According to sources at the Ministry of Finance, the virtual meeting held at 6:30 p.m. today was chaired by the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma. In the meantime, speaking to Derana, Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha revealed that the United States has agreed in principle to exempt from tariffs 1,161 specifically selected Sri Lankan exports. The Deputy Minister followed up by further revealing that negotiations are underway to identify certain goods imported by Sri Lanka from the United States, which could be exempted from Sri Lankan tariffs. Since Sri Lankan tariffs imposed on approximately $300 million worth of annual US imports fluctuate between 0% and 20%, the Deputy Minister went on to outline that the financial impact ensuing from such a drop in tariffs charged by Sri Lanka would be insignificant.
Now, former Minister Ali Sabri emphasizes that US tariffs could have a negative impact on global trade, with smaller nations like Sri Lanka bearing its brunt. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatha during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on Derana 24, the former minister further highlights how Sri Lanka's competitors such as Indonesia and Vietnam have successfully negotiated lower tariff rates, stressing that Sri Lanka must follow a similar path to secure either lower or comparable tariffs.
What could Sri Lanka have done different? From 44% to 30%, it sounds like an achievement that Sri Lanka has secured, the government has secured in terms of negotiations. But this still is a major blow on Sri Lanka's apparels, our tea, rubber, all that is destined to the US.
I think 30% is going to be a heavy blow on us. From 44% to 30% is some achievement, you must give them the credit. But the issue is not that. Issue is how our competitors have done with it. So we don't have the full control of what the US are going to do it, because tariff per se is not good for the world trade, free trade, and that will affect countries like Sri Lanka, because ultimately whatever they say, consumer has to pay. So when the prices go up, demand will reduce, and as a result of the entire world will suffer that. But the most important thing is what our competitors have achieved. That's the issue is. For example, if we have to pay 30% and if Indonesia is only paying 19%.
They were able to negotiate down from a massive 47%
or so. Vietnam is paying 20%. And if India also comes below 20%, that's going to be a massive hit on Sri Lanka, because most of our, probably 70% of our stuff that we are exporting there, including the apparel, rubber, coconut and all those things, those competitive countries are also doing it. So therefore it's important that we're trying to secure something less than 20%, or at least if you can't get below the others, but on par with the others, otherwise we are going to be in trouble. So therefore I think we could have prepared in advance, we could have lobbied it more, because the way American politics works today, not today, for a long period of time, it depends solely on lobbying. So lobbying is a part and parcel of their decision making. To be fair by our team there, our ambassador, Mr. Mahinda Singh, is a very skillful officer. He had done a lot of good work during my period of time also when we were there under President Ranil Wickremesinghe. He was a very able officer, but that alone is not good enough. Sometime it is ambassador level, then comes the foreign minister, then comes the trade minister, then comes the cabinet, and thereafter the head of state. So lobbying is all part of that. We could have done little more lobbying than what we used to do or what we have done so far, but still not too late. We have a window of opportunity till the 1st of August. So rather than finding fault, at the end of the day, if our country does well, so does all of us. And otherwise anything goes wrong. Therefore important thing is to quickly learn and then invigorate our effort more and more. And if there is possibility of further lobbying at that point in time, to pursue that. President Trump has said that we are not going to go after heavily on the small countries. For about 150 countries, he said that it will be about 10 to 12% or something, 10 no, little more than 10. So if we can bring that down into that and show us as also a small country, they are our biggest export partner, and come into a smaller player comparatively, which depend on the US tariff, is good thing to do. I think we should continue to negotiate on that. One other thing, but I think we have not been brought into the surface, it's not always the tariff. The trade deficit is only one part of it. There is something called current account. For example, though Sri Lanka export lot of goods to US, there is so many things other than direct trade to Sri Lanka which money flows into US. For example, our Google subscription, Apple subscription, our probably AI subscriptions, and the 44-45% of our entire budget for the year goes to service interest on our loan. Most of those interest, the loans have been loaned to Sri Lanka by either US banks or syndicates of the US banks and the bondholders. So all those things taken into account, the difference between trade deficit between our country and others, when you transform that into a current account, it's not that bad. So we need to emphasize that during the negotiation. I hope they would have done that also.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Yadia, ලොව වැඩියෙන්ම අලෙවි electric scooterය Avance Auto within.
Now in other news, the granting of 43 acres of land to Member of Parliament Chamindrani Kirala, a non-declarant under the Land Reform Commission Act, sparked controversy during a recent Committee on Public Enterprise hearing. It was further revealed that the land was allocated to Kirala by the Janata Estate Development Board and not the LRC, and that she is not legally eligible to obtain such land.
The land containing Rasagala, the Maduwanwala Walawwa and the Mahawalatanna Walawwa is co-owned. C. Kirala owns 22 acres of this plot of land. However, the question here is, how did C. Kirala declare ownership if she only owns 22 acres of this plot of land? This issue arose when 43 acres of land named Hamtanawatta belonging to the JEDB was released to her as an alternative land grant. Looking at this land in particular, 22 individuals declared holdings exceeding 50 acres, while 46 others, including Mrs. Kirala, were non-declarants. Non-declarants are individuals who own plots of land not exceeding 50 acres. The Land Reform Commission so far has not allocated any plots of land to the 22 declarants declarants or the other 46 non-declarants. We have no authority to grant lands to non-declarants since those lands are not vested with the Land Reform Commission. Therefore, as the LRC, we are not obligated to provide lands to Chamindrani Kirala.
ඉඩම දීලා තියෙන්නේ සර් ජනතා වතු සංවර්ධන මණ්ඩලයෙන් තමයි චාමිලි කිරියල්ට දීලා තියෙන්නේ.
ඒ ප්‍රකාශ නොවන 46ට ඔය කියපු එක්කන හැර අනිත් කටටත් ඒ වගේම දීලා තියෙනවා.
මම දැනුවත් නැහැ සර්.
එතකොට ඔය කියන ඉඩම් කිසිවකට නැවත නෛතික බැඳීමක් නැද්ද ඔබතුමන්ලාට?
We have disbursed the land vested with the Land Reform Commission to the Janata Estate Development Board and the State Plantation Corporation through gazettes. However, such gazettes are contingent upon certain conditions. The gazettes vest these organizations with the right to manage these lands. The Land Reform Commission, however, claims ownership.
කළමනාකරණය සඳහා නම් දීලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක JDB එකෙන් අහය අහන්න ඕනේ නෑ අපි.
ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ ඉඩම් වසංගත මණ්ඩලයේ සතුව තියෙනවනේ. ඔව්. හරිද? පරිපාලනය සඳහා. ඒතකොට ඒකෙන්ද මේ අක්කර 43යි රූට් එකයි පර්චේස් 26ක් චාමිනි කිරියාල මහත්මිය නිකුත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
නිකුත් කරලා තියෙන ජනතා වසංගත මණ්ඩලයෙන් හැබැයි ඔය ඉඩම පරිපාලනයේ තියෙන රාජවැලි සංස්ථාව යටතේ.
දැන් එතකොට දැන් මේ චාමිනි කිරියාල කියන්නේ ලක්ෂ්මන් කිරියාල මහත්තයාගේ බිරිඳනේ.
දුව.
Your position is that the courts won't recognize the LRC's ownership over this plot of land. However, a plot of land vested with the Balanguda plantation has been handed out to a member of parliament. How did this happen? Did she exert any political influence? Was the land handed over to her simply because Lakshman Kiriyalla is a former member of parliament?
We are unable to mention that without knowing the facts. But if we have given on behalf of the LRC, if we have given this, the LRC is responsible. This was not given by the LRC.
අපි දැනුවත් නැහැ සර්.
ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඕනර්ෂිප් එකට අනුව මේකට ඔක ලක්ෂණයක් ගත්තේ නැද්ද? ඒ අක්කර 43 පැවරීමට දාලා.
ගන්න බෑ ගරු මන්ත්‍රීතුමනි මොකද අපිට විරුද්ධව stay orders අරන් තියෙන හැම plantation එකම.
Now, Deputy Minister of Tourism, Professor Ruan asserts that the government will take necessary legal action against illegal businesses run by tourists, while adding that several groups have already been deported from the country. The Deputy Minister made these remarks while addressing a meeting where concerns were raised regarding the involvement of Russian tourists in businesses within Hikkadua.
A meeting between Deputy Minister of Tourism Professor Ruan and industrialists involved in tourism within Hikkadua was held yesterday. At the meeting, concerns were raised on Russian tourists owning and managing businesses in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, we are not in the tourism business. We are begging for tourists to visit us. Russian guests remain in the country for several months without visas. Nobody is apprehending them. They engage in businesses here. None of the shops or drivers of three-wheelers have customers because of this. They obtain three-wheelers on rent and then proceed to rent them out again to a third party. Please put an end to this. Allow tourists from Germany, Switzerland and Sweden to visit the country without visas, at least for a week. A massive number of tourists will come. The Hikkadua tourism zone was built to accommodate those tourists.
The government will intervene and provide solutions to the issue of illegal businesses run by tourists. We are already deporting several groups. The existing act governing tourism was passed in 2005, but the technology and intentions of tourists have changed over time. We are working towards amending the Tourism Act. We have provided a concession of $60 to tourists who arrive at the Mattala airport. However, a certain someone has accumulated money unlawfully and illegally by misrepresenting the facts on this concession. He has collected $30 per tourist by claiming that he secured the concession on behalf of these tourists. Local residents know the people who carry out these schemes and those who execute these schemes in Russia. I urge tourists to not be ensnared by such scams. The tourism sector contributes massively to the country's economy. We believe that these topics should be included in the school syllabus. We will take action in that regard. We are currently establishing tourism clubs in a number of schools.
Now, in response to growing concerns surrounding the human-elephant conflict, the opposition leader vowed to push the government for the implementation of a national action plan for the mitigation of the human-elephant conflict drafted in 2020. He shared these remarks at a meeting held at the opposition leader's office.
As part of the Citizens' Voice initiative launched by opposition leader Sajjit Premasa, a group of individuals representing wildlife conservation societies met the opposition leader at the opposition leader's office in Colombo.
National Action Plan for the Mitigation of Human-Elephant Conflict.
This is the National Action Plan for the Mitigation of the Human-Elephant Conflict. We will encourage the government to immediately implement the National Action Plan for the Mitigation of the Human-Elephant Conflict formulated in 2020. We firmly believe that there must be a multi-sector, multi-institutional drive to implement this action plan. We will encourage the government to set up a special presidential task force which will be tasked with implementing the roadmap mentioned here within the stipulated time period.
Arpico Next Gen. Make the leap to faster sleep.
Welcome back. Now in more local news, the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court today rejected the anticipatory bail application filed by former Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne, who sought preemptive release in anticipation of a possible arrest by the Bribery Commission. The same court also ordered former Minister S.M. Chandrasena, who is in remand custody over corruption charges, to be further remanded until the 1st of August.
Former Fisheries Minister Rajitha Senaratne filed an anticipatory bail application, claiming he is being targeted for arrest over the use of the sand dredging vessel Valigoa to remove sand from the Kirala Fisheries Harbour during his tenure. At the hearing today, Assistant Director of the Bribery Commission Sulochana Hettiarachchi presented evidence to the court. She informed the court that a Korean company had submitted a proposal to Minister Senaratne on the 19th of May 2012 to remove and process sand from the harbour for commercial use. However, the company lacked the required facilities and was provided with the vessel Valigoa, owned by the Ceylon Fishery Harbours Corporation. The Bribery Commission alleges that the project was carried out illegally under the direct orders of the suspect, causing approximately 26 million rupees worth of damage to the vessel. When summoned to provide a statement, Senaratne had failed to appear, citing illness, but the submitted documentation was merely a prescription, not a valid medical report. Accordingly, Hettiarachchi requested that the anticipatory bail application be rejected. President's counsel Maitri Gunaratne, appearing for former Minister Rajitha Senaratne, argued that cabinet approval had been granted for sand mining in both 2008 and 2012 and that the project was carried out accordingly. He claimed that the Bribery Commission was acting prejudicially and noted that a recent Supreme Court ruling affirms magistrates' authority to grant bail even when an arrest warrant has been issued. He requested that his client be released on bail. After reviewing the submissions, the Colombo Chief Magistrate rejected the anticipatory bail application filed by Rajitha Senaratne. Meanwhile, the corruption charges against former Minister S.M. Chandrasena were taken up again today at the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court over the alleged misappropriation of maize seeds worth 25 million rupees during the 2015 presidential election. According to a report filed by the Bribery Commission, Chandrasena had bypassed standard procedure and distributed maize seeds to political allies and associates instead of needy farmers. The Commission noted that investigations revealed the seeds were distributed arbitrarily, leading to significant financial losses. The prosecution requested that the suspect be further remanded, citing the need to record statements from around 70 employees of farmers' service centres and divisional secretariats. However, Defence Counsel Chamindrani applied for bail, arguing that the seeds were distributed fairly during the 2014 drought in Anuradhapura, based on requests from affected farmers. He claimed that the process was supervised by government officials and not politically motivated. He further refuted claims of assault or intimidation, stating that the suspect's name was not listed in related reports filed at the Anuradhapura Magistrates Court and accused the Bribery Commission of exaggerating and misleading the court. The defence urged the magistrate to grant bail. After considering the submissions, Colombo Chief Magistrate Tanuja Lakmali ordered that S.M. Chandrasena be further remanded until the 1st of August.
Now, meanwhile, Samagi Janabalawege MP Dayasiri Jayasekara has accused the current government of attempting to exonerate and release individuals involved in corruption. The MP made this statement while lodging a formal complaint with the CID over alleged fraud at the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited. Jayasekara expressed concern over the government's failure to implement the recommendations of a forensic audit related to the fuel distribution system at the CPSTL. He further emphasizes that his complaint aims to hold those responsible accountable and ensure transparency in the fuel distribution process. Now, Supreme Court Justice Yasantha Kodagoda asserts that the only way the public sector administrators can escape corruption is by acting in good faith and by maintaining honesty and independence. He made these remarks at a book launch held recently. Speaking at the same event, Minister of Plantation and Community Infrastructure Samantha Widyarathna notes that those seeking systemic change and a transparent system are only focused, however, on covering up their own acts of corruption.
A book authored by Secretary to the Ministry of Plantation and Community Infrastructure Facilities, Attorney at Law Prabhat Chandra Kirti, titled Administrative Law and Public Service, was launched recently under the patronage of Supreme Court Justice Yasantha Kodagoda.
I believe it is important to talk about legal provisions governing administration. Along with the Aragale, the people started seeking change. However, certain groups who seek change want thieves to be caught while also ensuring that their own corrupt activities remain concealed. They think individuals who are attached to institutions that they serve should not be caught. Employees of such institutions would interfere and protect those individuals. If the institution is obligated to pay fines over corruption, the institution's employees would collectively pay the fine. They find ways to justify corruption when the one engaged in corruption is one of their own. Recently, there was much discourse on officials being reluctant to take action over fears of possible legal action in the future. Many also urged caution against the possible collapse of the government sector. I have close to 28 years of experience in government service. In my experience, decisions taken in good faith will never result in punishment. As public sector administrators, you should be aware of how you could be entangled in corruption or bribery, as well as how you can avoid such situations. Let me elaborate on how you can prevent yourselves from being responsible for such crimes. Fulfill your duties in good faith, with honest intentions, and do so independently. If you follow these virtues, you will never be found guilty of corruption. When law is enforced against corruption, your response should not be to delay service. Doing so will completely decimate the efficiency of the government sector. Only one solution remains. You must execute your duties in honesty and good faith.
Welcome back. Now moving on to your business news, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka issued new directions to licensed financial institutions to impose maximum caps on loan-to-value ratios for vehicles-related credit facilities. The directive, effective from July 18th, applies to credit facilities granted by licensed banks, licensed finance companies and registered finance leasing establishments for the purpose of vehicle purchases. Under the electric category, the opportunity provided based on 2018 guidelines to obtain financing facilities of up to 90% of the value of the vehicle has now been removed. Loan-to-value ratio is now set at 80% for commercial vehicles, 60% for motor cars, SUVs and vans, 50% for three-wheelers and 70% for other vehicles. Registered vehicles which have been used for more than 1 year after the first registration will be capped at 70% of the value of the vehicle. The CBSL says the move aims to enhance the efficacy of macroprudential policy making and mitigating systemic risks while harmonizing existing caps on loans-to-value ratios. Now in other news, officials from institutions related to the tea industry recently met with Secretary to the President Dr. Nandika Sanath Kumar Nayaka at the Presidential Secretariat. Both parties reviewed the issues that have emerged within Sri Lanka's tea industry, and special attention was paid to improving the quality of tea leaves and productivity of tea cultivation and exploring new international market opportunities. The challenges faced by tea manufacturers were also discussed, to which Dr. Kumar Nayaka instructed officials to provide constructive solutions to these issues. The importance of implementing various programs for the capacity development of small tea estate owners was also discussed. Discussions also covered the future program to be implemented by the Minister of Plantation, Communication and Infrastructure regarding tea cultivation, including the establishment of a formal data system and the need for its proper follow-up. Furthermore, Tea Traders Association urged the government to strictly enforce the law against factories that compromise quality during tea production. Now in other news out of the business world, the Colombo Stock Exchange closed in positive territory today as a result of price gains in counters such as the Central Finance Company, Haley's and John Keel's Holdings. The benchmark all-share price index gained 0.51% to settle at 18,973.70 points. Meanwhile, the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 increased by 0.47% to close at 5,655.43 points. Market turnover crossed 7.6 billion rupees. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to turnover, followed by the banking sector. Foreigners closed as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 1.9 billion rupees. And now let's take a look at the day's foreign exchange rates. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.